This is Identity at the Center.
Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff, and I'm flying solo today. Jim's off. He's on assignment, as we say in the biz. But today we've got a great episode. Today's is sponsored by GitGuardian. So we're going to introduce Dwayne here in a second. But if you want to learn more about them, you can find them at gitguardian.com/LPS/IDAC. Just to make it clear, right, this is a sponsored episode. This is how we support the podcast. And we're very thankful that GitGuardian's one of those sponsors that have stepped forward to help us spread the gospel of identity and access management. So let me go ahead and introduce Dwayne McDaniel. He's a principal developer advocate at GitGuardian. Welcome to Identity at the Center, Dwayne.
Thanks very much for having me, Jeff. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And I don't know what it is about principal developer advocate that it seems like it just gets blocked up in my mouth and I don't say it no good, as Charlie Kelly of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia would say. Tell me a little bit about your role. How did you get into identity? Is it something that you chose or did it choose you?
I actually agree with you. I trip over it all the time. I misspelled it the first time I ever wrote it down in my signature, and thank goodness I have Grammarly. And it told me, hey, that's not right. No, I've been a developer advocate for a little over a decade now. So my background comes from the world of Java middleware a long time back, platforming, our platforms and tools, DevOps focused for a good stretch of my life. And that's actually how I went from sales. I have a sales background to developer advocacy. Was working for a platform called Pantheon.io. And I had a VP of sales who said, hey, you're not the sales guy I need, but you're really good at explaining stuff. And I need you to help people figure stuff out. And that's literally, I took that as a mission, and it became kind of my advocacy, like for myself, for what I do. Like that's how I describe what I generally do. So a few jobs later, end up having a chance to work for someone who had worked for a previous company that I'd been at. And that's how I ended up here. And this is really my first job in the security realm, but I've been here almost 4 years now. It's hard to believe, but 3.75, 4 years by the time this comes out. And yes, this is my first role where I've had the chance to look at identity and access management and the depth that I have. It's one of those things that I just kind of always took for granted in previous roles, that that's somebody else's burden, that's somebody else's problem, or that's baked into the platform. I mentioned Pantheon a little bit ago. They were the company in 2013, 2014. They had environment variables, like secret environment variables, and told you, do not hand configure your vars. Like, do not hand configure these. Let us do this, and then we can swap these out at intervals, and we'll handle all that for you. So your database credentials, your Redis credentials, like we got that. New Relic credentials. And at the time, it was like, well, okay, that's just how it works. And that was in 2014. And then it comes to find out, I end up working for a company, and our entire premise is people leak secrets. People hard code these things left and right, and by the millions per year. And it just left me scratching my head when I first joined. Like, is this that bad of a problem? And yeah, it turns out it actually is.
It's amazing, how far this industry has come. And yet, here we are in the year 2026 that we're still finding companies that have like hard-coded secrets into applications. They've left open, different repositories or repos or whatever we want to call, like all these different resources we're pulling into. With you kind of getting into this role here at GitGuardian and, really just starting into the identity spot, I guess, officially, is there anything that surprises you from your past background and kind of like, hey, this is kind of interesting. I didn't expect this.
Oh man, there's a lot of things. The first, like I said, is just people are doing this. Like you're hard coding credentials. Like you're trusting that these secrets are, one, not going to be stolen, and two, that you're going to be able to remember where they all are, and that you're going to be able to rotate them yourself. Like that was how we viewed it back in my old company, Pantheon, was, look, this is a burden, and we're going to take that operational burden on and take that off of your hands so you can focus on doing what you actually want to do, which is deliver your actual applications out there. The bigger surprises have actually been more subtle than that. Like I've come to personally believe that we mixed up authentication and authorization in a really terrible way, with the way we've done it with passwords and API keys and standing privilege. And everything associated with these hard-coded secrets, everything associated with a key that anybody that holds that key can go through the door and then do whatever they want on the other side within a certain scoped level. Recently, I've been actually having the conversations like, do identity and access management, is that one thing? There's an and in there for a reason. Where are those lines? Where do we have those conversations? So that's where I'm at right now with it. But just the scope of how much we have gotten it wrong, and we're seeing the ramifications of that throughout the supply chain attacks these days, and just story after story after breach after breach. We've been saying it for a while here at GitGuardian, but attackers aren't bothering to break in anymore. They're just logging in, and that's the easiest path in, which is sad. But I was personally a little surprised by that when I first came to fully realize that's the extent of the damage.
Preach on, brother. I think there's so many people who think of IAM as just authentication, but it's so much more than that. I've talked to hundreds of people, on this podcast, been very fortunate, but very few what I would call, your kind of role, that principal developer advocate. I even said it right that time.
Yeah.
What does, kind of like the normal day look like for that type of role? Just kind of maybe peel down the fourth wall there and kind of take people behind the curtain.
I wish there was a normal day. That's kind of the joy of the role. I see myself as one of the last generalists in a world where the pendulum is swinging back toward the generalist. I technically report to the CMO, and other organizations, DevRel reports to operations or to engineering or to sales. It doesn't really matter where we report up in the chain. The matters how we interact with all of the departments. So I interact with product as much as I do with sales. I'm a function of marketing, interact with our customer support, interact with documentation, interact with basically all of the teams. I am the person in the room saying, wait a minute, a person who doesn't have this insider knowledge might not know that. This is hard. I'm the person who breaks things. They will give me early access to things, and I will be the loudest in the channel saying, hey, this doesn't work. Hey, this doesn't work. And like, it was a beta preview. Of course we know it didn't work, but thank you for telling us. The person who's like, we're going to release this script, and I try to run it and I follow the instructions to the letter, and like, here's the errors I get. And I just assume that naivete that a new developer, I want to advocate for them that they're going to have the best possible experience. And at the same time, I get to spend a lot of my time out in the field at conferences. I went to like 34 conferences last year alone. I've spoken at over 100 since I started at Pantheon. Or I'm sorry, since I started at GitGuardian. I got Pantheon on the brain. I was talking about it earlier. And I get to bring that knowledge back in-house. So what are the latest trends? What did the person who actually wrote this report that we just read last week, what did they actually say about it in person? What did they present at their session? What are the trends going on out there? And try to bring that knowledge back and close that loop. So I'm advocating both ways. Internally, I'm advocating, hey, this is the actual situation on the ground and what people are facing out there and why they can't just jump to a better solution tomorrow, and why they can't just adopt us like right this second based on their other priorities in their stack. And the other way around, like the community needs to know what the problems are, how we can address those. I try not to do it in a selly way or a salesy way. I'm old school sales, so it always shines through a little bit, but trying to explain the bigger broad strokes technologically, this is what we need to be addressing. This is where we need to be going as an industry. And yeah, of course, GitGuardian fits in there somewhere, but I also put us up on the same screens that I do people consider direct competitors or open source products that can do a fraction, that handle part of the use case, and try to explain, like, in the bigger sense, this isn't just a GitGuardian can save you issue. This is we need some fundamental governance conversations at a higher level. And yeah, you need better tooling along the way, but the more important thing is process and people and how you put those plans together.
So what is it about like the secret space that kind of pulled you in with all the different things that we have in identity going on? Like, what is it about secrets? It's like, oh yeah, like that's where I want to be right now.
This actually comes from a couple jobs ago. I was at a place called GitKraken. I've worked for two companies with Git in the name. And at GitKraken, I love Git. I absolutely adore teaching people Git basics, explaining how it works internally. I read the the Git book years ago. You can too. It's a little dated, but all the foundational stuff is still there. It's just the git-scm.com/book, I think, or just look up the Git book and it's free, and explains how this all works, the plumbing level versus the porcelain, and all those fun hidden commands, and like what libgidc is, and like how we're implementing these things at scale across platforms without having to put the CLI in place. Anyway, long story short, I'm looking at Git. One of the most powerful things built into Git is the hook system. Linus Torvald needed a way to run a script when a thing executed. So they put 17 various hook points where an event happens inside of Git and something executes, whatever that script is. It can be in anything you want as long as you have a local executable environment. And I came across this idea literally after I left Pantheon of like, hey, people are hard coding secrets. That's nuts. What if we just put hooks in there? So I started giving a talk back in 2021. I believe the first time I gave it was stop committing your secrets, get hooks to the rescue. So specifically what about secrets is it's one of those things, if you can nip it in the bud, as they say, if you can stop it before it gets committed, you solve an entire class of problem. If you put it into your source code and you push it and that source code gets public, wow, now everyone in the world can log into whatever that thing is. If you put it into your source code and it doesn't leak publicly, but somebody breaches, well, guess what? You just gave them an open door into anything. Like you can look at so many examples. The Uber breach from 2022 is one of the most egregious because after they got through PAM, they phished a super admin password, got through, flooded them with alerts, got through that, realized, hey, there's PowerShell scripts everywhere, chock full of all the credentials. Like they taunted HackerOne from within their own interfaces because, well, they just had the keys. They could just march in and say, all right, I'm here. I can do whatever I want. So it just seemed, even back then, before I worked for GitGuardian, that it was just, this solves an entire class of issue. And I wasn't even thinking really from a pure security standpoint. And like, I wasn't thinking in terms of IAM. I was thinking in terms of DevOps. Like DevOps has very aligned goals with security. We want uptime. We want no one to come in and mess with the integrity of our stuff. And at the end of the day, we do not want auditors or lawyers breathing down our necks saying, hey, you did this wrong. And that's kind of the same general goal of the CIA triad for security. So if we can align those, and I think identity is where they align perfectly. So that's how I got so passionate about this stuff. And then working for GitGuardian, just seeing the amount of research and seeing what's out there and like the horror stories and paying attention to news cycles as close as I do, like I am more convinced now than ever that if we dealt with this one aspect, we would solve so many problems around security. Like so many supply chain attacks right now are just get the credentials and pivot from there, or get through an initial misconfiguration to get the credentials and move on from there. And you just see that time after time after time. I did an independent search the other day, and it came out like 37% of all articles in the last year from Bleeping Computer were about credential abuse. Like, yeah, it's a problem.
That puts the bleeping in Bleeping Computer. think about it. Let me learn more here about GitGuardian, because I will say I'm not as familiar with it as probably other developers might be. I'm not a developer, and I'm sure we have lots of people listening who are not familiar. So give me the overview. Like, what is GitGuardian? What is the mission? What are the problems that you're looking to solve? And start with that.
So our co-founder started in 2017, looking at what can you glean off of the API from the public API for GitHub. You can look at it today. It's still public. It's in the name of the product, api.github.com/events. It's a fire hose. Last year was 1.9 billion commits across the thing. And it's everything that happens in public. So you change the name of a repo, you make something public, you push a commit, it's all there. And one of the things they immediately discovered on just doing some cursory grep and some regex looking through what's there is, hey, why are there all these production environment keys laying around? So they started making phone calls and The story I've heard is most people hung up on them or got extremely mad or threatened to sue because, hey, why are you looking at our private repos? Like, we're not. Like, this is how we got this. It's literally in public. Like, you should do something about that. And it was one company said, hey, this is great. How much do we owe you? And they said, hey, there's something here. And that's kind of how it started with public monitoring. So we still to this day look at every new event that hits GitHub public. If it is a new commit or something that has become public that wasn't public before, we scan it for a secret. And we started with a handful, like your most common patterns. And right now we have over 600 detectors that can pinpoint like, hey, this is a secret. So we do generic detection with contextual analysis. If we look at the long weird string, if it's in a header and the app fails, if nothing comes back from that call, we're pretty sure that's a secret. Like no matter what form that takes, we call those generic detectors. So that's how we started with public monitoring. We still do that. That's still probably our most popular thing that people talk about out there because it's tied to our report that we do. That's how we build our annual report, which we'll talk about later. But then people started asking, can we hook this up to internal repos? And the answer to that is, well, Git's Git. If we can handle the scale of watching everything in GitHub public, sure. And that's what we started doing. So originally it was just your Git repos, no matter where they were hosted. And then it became, well, we have a CLI. We can scan anything, anywhere. Just give us a path, give us like, tell us point at the repo, no matter where it's hosted. But then it's quickly spread to, well, secrets don't just leak in code. They leak in the entire ecosystem around the software development lifecycle. So Slack, Jira, Teams, Confluence, S3 buckets. We're actually just about to release that. It's in private beta right now. Let's scan all your buckets, see what's in there. Docker images, registries, and the list just goes on. And then we've recently added the ability to bring your own source, which means if it's got text that's scannable, we can make it a source that you can scan on a regular repeated basis. Just a little bit of wiring and off you go to literally anything under the sun, from logs, your homegrown SIEM, SOAR, whatever. We can make it happen. And then about a year ago, or a little over a year ago, we went down the path of NHI governance. So NHI governance is the outcome. Like if you have a plan of we need our non-human identities, which is the vast majority of keys are associated with non-human identities versus humans. Like it's a 150 to 1 guesstimate right now across the industry. For every one person that has a key, there's 150 non-humans that have keys. So that's what we leaned into this NHI side. And non-human identity governance is really what state are these things in, who owns them, what policy breaches have occurred, like has it lived too long? That's by far the number one breach that people have with these entities. Is it over permissioned? Do you know this has admin privileges? Like we can highlight and surface that in a coherent way across not just the secrets that you've leaked out there in public or inside your repos and like whatever they appear in plain text, but now we can hook into your vault systems and give you a pure inventory view of all of your identities across the thing holding your keys. And as of the end of last year, we started hooking into identity providers. So Okta and AWS IAM, and start being able to inventory. So Anthropic, OpenAI, we can say, hey, these are all of the accounts that got made. Even if they're not used, even if they're not in the wild quite yet, but they've been provisioned, we can give you that insight. Say, hey, this person provisioned this at this such time, and we don't see it used anywhere yet. Or, hey, this same identity is being used by these like 15 endpoints. And we've extended that just recently, and this is just coming out now. We're happy to work with folks out there to move it to endpoint protection, to move all of this onto the developer machine as an MDM solution.
So I think what you've kind of described there is not only like the secrets themselves are a problem, but you start getting into a little of the secret sprawl, as it's typically called, right? You've got all these different spots that, things can be stored in, kept in, and each of those are a vector that could be potentially misused. Talk to me a little bit about where do you typically see those things kind of manifest? Is there like a common area that you've found where it's like, yeah, we know about this, but oh, by the way, people listening out there in the world, you really should be checking this thing because this is kind of like the common thing that we see a lot.
One of the most common files we find out there, as you can guess, is env files. Um, it's very easy with Git to use git ignore. It's also very easy to mess up git ignore. One bad line, one bad comment, and wow, you've blown out your git ignore or accidentally exclude your git ignore file. Actually, recently, somebody told me a story that they were using Claude Code and multi-agent setup, and one of the agents decided that git ignore was in the way, and it just simply removed it. And the next commit, they didn't notice that, and then they pushed all of their environment variables public. They know that because we sent them an email. So I didn't talk about that. That is part of our service, and that's something we've been doing the entire time, is if we find a secret in one of those commits publicly, we send an email to the committer right then and there. It's an automated system. It's completely sealed off from the rest of our business. It's not a marketing thing for us. It is literally like, this is a public good. You did this publicly, shouldn't do that. Before I worked for the company, I got one of those because I had tried to be clever and got a new laptop and I just tried to bounce my SSH key over through a public or a private GitHub repo. Like, that'll work. That'll save me a few minutes. And no, it actually cost me a lot of time because I got an email immediately saying, hey, you leaked this private SSH key in public. And the first words out of my mouth were, no, I didn't. That's not a public repo. And I went and looked like, oh no, I have leaked this in public. So right then and there, I had to go through everything that was associated with I'll admit I was super lazy. I was reusing that SSH key in multiple platforms. Should not have done that. It's a bad practice. I know that now. But nothing bad happened. I was able to catch it so fast and able to invalidate it so fast on like GitHub and the other platforms I was using it on that I never saw any negative effects because they saved me on that. So that's what we're hoping to do with everyone out there. If you see an email from us, we're not picking on you. We're just trying to keep everybody safe. We call that our Good Samaritan program.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that a little bit later on, but let's talk about it right now. So what is, you kind of talked about getting that email, but how does that effectively work? Is it something that, well, you described it as something like you guys automatically do, but tell me more. Like, can I opt in? Can I opt out? Like, how does this program work?
You can definitely opt out. We would not recommend it though. And if you are not signing your commits with an actual real email, that's problematic in and of itself for a number of reasons, but also means we can't email you. Which we're starting to get into some weirdness there around co-signed commits. Because who do we email if there's like multiple committers? But if it's obviously Claude or GPT, then yeah, it's pretty obvious what happened. But no, we don't have it as an opt-in. This is, again, we're looking at a public feed. This is public information. We know we're not the only people doing this out in the world. So the way Git works and the way it's worked for, it turned 21. I just realized that this month. Git just turned 21. It's old enough to drink now. April 2005 was the first time Linus described Git. I think this is the week it got named too when we're recording this. Just weird fun fact. But one of the ways it works is you have to sign your commits. There has to be an email address so Linus can get in touch with you to figure out what the heck's going on with this patch if he needs to. That was the original idea. And we still benefit from that because, well, there's a way to contact the person who made that change, who made that commit. We know we're not the only people looking at that feed. We're the people who are trying to keep everyone safe. And we're doing it as a public good so we can alert you, hopefully before the attackers get a hold of it. If you're a nation state actor out there, you have caches of everything that happens. It's not that hard to set up. Just most people don't have the bandwidth or resources to try to deal with the almost 2 billion commits a year and then sort out what they can do with it. The big nasties definitely do. The cybercrime syndicates, I would not be surprised if there was a private server somewhere on the dark web that shiny hunters and the other threat actors like collectively just, hey, I noticed this on this part of the repo or this over here. The other danger to it is people have this misunderstanding of what GitHub is and isn't, and what it can do and what it can't do. There is the belief, and it is true for a certain class of a secret, that they have this program. It's been going for a few years now. And if you register your API key as a provider, if you make API keys and you register with GitHub, you can set up an automatic invalidation or attach policy to it. So the classic is AWS credentials, your secret, your AWS password and secret, or API key and secret combo. They will shoot off an email immediately when it gets uploaded to GitHub. It will immediately shoot an email to AWS, and AWS will attach user policy. I think we're up to 3 or 4 now. And that policy is just disallow anything that would cost money. It's not a security policy. It's actually a cost savings measure from AWS if you actually look at the policy itself that gets attached. So that's one of those misunderstandings. Like, hey, well, GitHub will just take care of that, right? Because we push it onto GitHub. Well, not really. It works for some things, not everything, and then it doesn't always invalidate. It just attaches some kind of policy to it. The other part is the push protection. Push protection is awesome on GitHub for a certain set of things, and assuming that you use it. It's very easy to turn off. It's very easy to end around on a per push basis and just say, I know what I'm doing. I'll do it later. And last time I checked, it wasn't free for private repos. That might have changed. Don't hold me on that one. But it's something that's very easy to get around, that push protection. The other piece is we get a lot of feedback, and I'm always surprised by this to this day. Like it's happened to me this week. Someone said, "Oh, I've taken the commit down. It's all good now." It's like, what they meant is they overwrote that commit with another commit, or they added another commit onto the chain, and oh no, it's gone. It's like, no, that other commit's still there in public. Like, that's how Git works. Like, that just because you put another commit in front of it doesn't make that commit not be there. And like the fact that Git is kind of forever. And even if you try to prune it, orphan commits still exist. There's a giant shadow cache that is GitHub. And if you know how to access it, you have access to all of these commits that people thought, well, no, I deleted that commit. Like that, I cleaned that up. Like, it's gone. It's like, well, if it ever made it to public, if we sent you an email about it, assume it's forever. Assume that on a server that is somebody else's, on another platform somewhere, that commit will live forever. And we've seen that in the wild. Like, we've seen multiple attacks where it's like, we see the repo get taken down immediately, like turned to private again. And then there's still a security incident related to that organization, a few days or weeks later.
Because it takes time for them to go back in and fix all the different underlying mechanisms that are associated with that.
The hope is that they will. We have evidence that they don't. This is directly from the report. We haven't really talked about our State of Secret Sprawl report, but that is the big glaring number that bothers me personally the most out of it is, so for a class of our secrets that we find that we can detect, we can do a validation step. Can't do it for everything under the sun, but we're working on that. Where we do a non-intrusive API call to the platform, or some kind of call to the platform, say, hey, does this key work? Does it authenticate? And if it's valid, we tell you it's valid. If it's not valid, we say it's not valid. If we don't know, we tell you we couldn't find out. We never try to mislead you. The vast majority of secrets are fall in that generic camp, and we can't do that. We took for our 2025 report, looking at 2024 data, we took a sampling of secrets that we found to be valid back in 2022. They're still on public. They're still there. We went back and checked. Like, yeah, these are still there. So 11,000 plus, I think 11,700 or something. The exact numbers in the report, the old report. And we tried to revalidate them, exact same process. And in January 2025, 70% came back as still valid. Years later, we did the exact same experiment, the exact same data set, and it's dropped to 64%. Which means only 6% of those have been dealt with in the last year, or in the 2025. Now, dealt with could mean that service just went away, or they finally did rotate that secret, or something. We don't know. So What we do know is that there's evidence that if it is a long-lived secret that hits public and it's valid, it has a tendency to stay valid, and that's terrifying.
Why do you think that is? Like, why aren't if people are being made aware that they have a problem, why do you think they don't fix it?
I think it's a combination of factors. The first is they don't have a good, solid plan and governance. I used governance earlier, and that's what I really mean by governance, is there's no good governance in place to say, here's what you do instead. If you just swap out secret 1 for secret 2, and it's both in plain text, you have done nothing. There is no point in doing that exercise. And people logically know that. Well, if I don't have a better way to handle this, I'm just going to keep the old one there. There's also just the fact of inertia. The risk of something bad happening is the probability that an attacker will eventually do something nefarious. The danger of downtime is dollars and cents. It's plain as day. If this system goes down for an hour, we lose X amount of money. Let's leave the system run for as long as we can without making any changes, and there might not be any issues. And that comes down to a business decision, not a technical decision, not a security decision. Like, yeah, let's see what happens. It hasn't happened so far. Nobody's knocked these companies completely offline yet. What's the worst that's going to happen? We'll take the risk and go for just keep the thing running. I think we are starting to see better governance out there, especially as supply chain attacks have ramped up a lot in the last year, targeting developers and targeting credentials specifically. But we're still stuck in this paradigm of, well, what do we do instead? And if you're not focused on this, like I'll admit, I'm hyper-focused on this because where I work and what I read day in, day out. Most developers are not. Most DevOps teams are not. They're got so many other things they need to pay attention to. Uptime, throughput, network bandwidth, so many issues that from the security side, it's easy to say, well, it's going to happen. And we take those for granted. But DevOps teams, developers are under pressure on all of this stuff all the time. And it's like, do I fix our throughput? Do I fix the number of customers that can check out in an hour? Or do I fix this hard-coded secret that's been in there for a year that nothing bad's happened to yet? What do I do on my next sprint? What am I going to get a bonus on? What am I going to get paid on? What am I going to get yelled at by my manager the loudest about? And they guarantee you it's not the secret most of the time, unless there is an active incident. And then it's all drop out what you're doing, all hands on deck. We lived through it and we're never going to do that again, right? And then everybody just go back to work. Don't put anything better in place. But I think that's going to change. I think that is changing now, and the technology is evolving very quickly. And I think we're going to get to a point where hard-coded secrets are going to be laughable in just a few years. Not overnight, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, but there'll be a point in the not too distant future where we'll say, what, you hard-coded an API key? What were you thinking? It's like using Windows Explorer 8. Like, why? Why would you do that? That's archaic.
Well, that's why we do this podcast. It's a little bit of a time capsule. The people in the future will be looking at these cave people, IAM, who are trying to figure out, how to do things. I was going to ask you about that report that you mentioned. So the State of Secret Sprawl 2026, I'm looking at the cover of it right here, and we'll have a link in our show notes for people to check out. It says 5th edition, so I'm assuming you've been doing this for at least 5 years. But it also has a tagline that says, the year software changed forever. Mm-hmm. Take me behind that tagline.
So one of the great joys we have at GitGuardian is we get to watch technology in real time evolve, that evolution. The way I like to phrase it is I can't tell you the exact traffic patterns and exactly what cars are on the road by the number of accidents, but I can get some pretty good information about makes and models and how people are generally behaving on the road. And that's kind of what we can extrapolate from this. So the elephant in the room always is AI. It has been for a couple of years now, but 2025 is the year we watched, or from the 2025 report to 2026 report, it became not a experiment, not a test for companies. It became the mainstream how we develop. And it goes well beyond the enterprise. This is just how developers in general are approaching the field now. Things that might have been done a few years ago with like, I've tied together these scripts and maybe got N8N in there. Now is like, well, no, this is agentic from the ground up. This is just literally how we're doing it. And that's evidenced from the sheer number of services we're seeing with leaked keys. Was Open Router had the largest increase. Now, to be fair, Open Router did not exist 4 years ago. They didn't exist 3 years ago, I'm pretty sure. I think they're fairly new. The platform might have, but not with like the full breadth of them doing what they do, where they give free tokens for certain things. And they're a really cool platform that allows you to do multiple LLM models. So you can have a fallback, a natural fallback. So instead of calling directly to Claude, you're calling, or Anthropic, you're calling, it will just fall back to the next thing you picked on the list. And that's not available. Not a big deal. We'll go down to the next thing on. It's a really cool system. But we watched 48x increase in the number of leaked secrets from 2024 to 2025. Like that's massive. And 12 of the top 15 most leaked secrets are the highest secrets with the highest change rate of leaks were AI platform services. So not the LLMs themselves. DeepSeek's definitely on there, but things like Brave Search, MCP, running, not remembering all the names of all the things, but there's a lot of them. And if you look at the report, you can run down that list and say like, hey, this is a serious jump in what kinds of services we're seeing. Like Supabase. Supabase really showed up for the first time last year's report, the 2025 report, in a significant way. And it's still showing up in a significant way on this report. It's not growing as massively and rapidly as it did the previous time, but Supabase we call out because it's how people do cheap vector databases like pretty quickly. Is that the only use case for Supabase? Absolutely not. But that's predominantly the one that you see people talk about in public. So again, we can't tell exactly what cars are on the road, but we can tell you the general shape of traffic and how people are behaving out there. And we didn't say the big number. There's a big number at the beginning of this report. That's the thing that we always get the news about. And that's something, if you're listening to this, you probably have seen at least a mention of this out there because it gets picked up by a lot of sources. But the total number of secrets we saw added to GitHub in public in 2025 was 28,649,024. Yeah. I'm just going to say 28.65 million. I'm going to round up a little bit because I'm just take that liberty. But over 28.6 million secrets. That's a 34% increase year over year. And this is a continuing trend. We have seen it rise every year since we've started putting out this report, and really from before that, before we put out these numbers publicly. The first report, we went back and we looked at that data set and reran basically all the numbers. And we were very conservative in our first reports because there's a lot of, we want the highest precision and recall we can have, but we need to be sure, especially around generic secrets and contextual analysis. And we simply didn't have the capabilities around LLMs that we have today. So going back, looking at all the numbers, that first report, if we ran the exact same tools we had today, it's 11 million secrets got added to GitHub in public in the year 2020. 2023, 18 million. 21 million in 2024, and then here we're almost 29 million in 2025, across 2025. The interesting trend on that isn't just that, hey, we're leaking more secrets. Obviously, there's more developers. But when we did the comparison, and this is one of the numbers that jumped out to me, GitHub reported growing 98% over that same time period, and we're reporting 152% growth of leaked secrets. So this is not just a new person problem. This is not just a new developer is going to leak secrets. This is serious. Like, we continue as an industry to keep leaking secrets at an alarming rate. And we've never done it faster. And we've never done it with more lines of code than we did in 2025. So it's really is the year everything changed when you look at it from just a pure numbers perspective. Just it's ramped up, not an order of magnitude yet, but it feels like it's headed that way.
Yeah, I feel like that "yet" is the key word there because, we went almost 35 minutes, I think, without mentioning AI, which I think might be a record for us, at least in our recent episodes. But I feel like we're on this, exponentially upward trajectory of this problem because now it is becoming mainstream. I mean, I'm Vime coding, stuff on the weekends, and I am definitely not a developer, which means I'm relying on other tools to help me think about security, and I'm learning stuff, about that, especially when it comes to identity. But do you feel the same where it's like, okay, AI really wasn't doing much development type stuff, but now we get into this world of NHIs, agentic identities, MCP servers, agent to agent, right? And it becomes this exponential, increase in the developer footprint at large.
Yeah, we actually have the numbers to back that up. We specifically looked in and did a very close up view of Claude Code. And there's an interesting trend that happened where January of 2025, there were no commits signed by Claude Code or co-signed by Claude Code or co-authored by Claude Code is the proper way to say it. That's one of the notations in Git. You can add additional signers to a commit. So Claude Code allows you to do that. They started in earnest and very early. So we see the first ones show up in February and there's 2. And then by the middle of the year, it is 4x. You're 4 times more likely to have committed a secret if you co-signed or co-authored with Claude Code than if you didn't. And then around September, they release a new model and that number starts ticking back down. It never gets to parity. It never gets back to that baseline. So for every 1,000 commits, we're seeing 1.5 secrets, and it's 2.4, I think, for Claude across the entire year. So you're more than twice as likely across the entire year on average to have leaked a secret if you are letting Claude co-author. Now, what we're inferring from that is you're more likely to have just let Claude do all the work if you're letting it co-author. And that non-scientific little surveys we have done always point back to that exact same thing. It's yes, I sign my own commits after Claude gives me the thing. Those are at least reviewed in some capacity, even though we're pushing thousands of lines of code per PR at this point, per commit at this point, versus, hey, that looks good enough. Claude, go ahead and do the Git thing for me. And vibe code it all the way to production. That's what we're seeing. If you're not putting yourself in the loop, if you're not doing those reviews and you're not taking full responsibility of this is on my shoulders completely, and I'm not letting Claude say it co-authors, then you're less likely to have leaked a secret. So will we see the models get better? We are really hoping so. It's strange to say I'm rooting for Claude here, but I really am seeing the improvement from September to the end of the year, and now seeing what there will be coming out with this year. We might get to a point where it will be safer overall to commit with Claude Code, to let it go ahead and handle these things for you. It's not today. We have the evidence it's not in the year 2025, but yeah, we're in April already of 2026. That's hopefully, cross our fingers, that will be something we'll be able to help solve for new developers as the models get better, as the training gets better, as we realize, hey, we can't just keep training on templates and old data and old ways of doing it because that's all insecure and terrible.
I feel like that's table stakes now for any of these, AI coding agents, right? Either helpers or fully autonomous. It strikes me that they have to get the security right. They might get a little bit of a grace or a free pass here over the last couple of years while this is kind of being built. But at some point, security teams are going to come along and say, no, you cannot use that. It is not secure. And so I feel like it's in their best interest, right? Whatever company is developing, any of these, coding AI agent tools, that they have to get the security right. Am I being fair with that observation?
I think you're being optimistic with that observation.
That's fair.
Putting security in a place where they can literally say no, I'm not sure that's reality anymore. We just saw this week the news from Vercel. It was one developer used a compromised agent and all of their internal secrets just got leaked.
It's amazing. That's what it takes, right? You could do everything right by the book, and then one person goes, one direction that maybe is or isn't sanctioned, and there your castle starts to crumble.
And I don't know if it was their report or someone else's report that I read this week. I read a lot of reports. As part of the job of developer advocate is to stay up on what's going on. That said, when they brought that up to their internal developers, not a single developer knew that was even a possibility. They hadn't heard. They're not keeping up with the latest, greatest attacks. They're not keeping up with like the horrors that can be done through prompt injection. Like they know it exists. It's something out there that's going to affect someone else in the world. But you know what? I'm going to keep developing the way I've been developing because that has kept me employed and that has kept me active and happy and healthy all this time. And now we can't trust our tools. Like I'll give you an example. The advice we're giving people now is local environment variables are no longer safe. If you'd have told me a year ago, I would be giving that advice to developers now, I wouldn't have believed you. Move to local vaults. KeyPass is free. 1Password, most companies provide some kind of password system, and they all have documentation and guides on how to do this properly. But moving away from, at any point, anything on your machine can reach that text file, can reach that your history, can reach your logs, can reach, at this point, there's no difference between the data plane and the control plane for most AI instances or for most agentic instances. So you can simply open up a file and Vim will arbitrarily execute this thing that will call OpenClaw that will then run a scanner to look at all of your credentials, like dump all of your environment variables and then report those out to some kind of thing on the blockchain. Like that sounds sci-fi, but that's literally happening right now. That's Canister Worm from Team PCP. Like these are real attacks that are happening in real time. And we in security are like living by the seat of our pants, moment to moment. What horrible, new, terrible thing is going to emerge today in the news? Like I read multiple news sources a day that like are not mainstream news. By the time it hits like your CNBC or your whatever news source you're reading out there, your ground news, like, oh no, this has been going on for a while. It's like it is already too late to do anything about that version of the attack. Just you hope you didn't get popped. You hope you weren't one of the people that downloaded the wrong version or opened the wrong file with the wrong tool.
All right. Well, shout out to Ground News there. I think it's a cool thing.
Yeah, I love Ground News.
Check it out for people who are interested. So we've spent the last 45 minutes kind of talking about all these problems and stats and measures. And I'm sure we got a lot of people listening that are like, okay, so what do I do about it? And a lot of the people that are listening may or may not be, so they're probably not developers. They're probably more focused than I am, just by the nature of this podcast. What are some of the things that people can take away and say, okay, these are the questions I need to start asking either my dev team or my DevSecOps or information security or whatever, right? Groups might be in the role of application development for organization. Like, what are some initial questions for me as an IAM practitioner out in the world to say, how do I get my arms around this problem? How do I, get the scope and start to talk about it with those folks?
I think for IAM folks particularly, asking, does this fall under my scope of what access means? If an auditor comes to your door and says, unauthorized access happened, and that's described under NIST, and under NIST 2, like no matter what PCI, unauthorized access happened and customer data got breached. Are you in the position to say, well, that was a machine credential, like that's clearly not me? Or, look, you're in charge of IAM, and that's access, and that machine has an identity. Like, how do you align that? So if that's the first, like, actually come to Jesus moment here of, is this something I can deal with? Is this something we can approach as an organization? The answer has to be yes. The answer has to be yes. But how do you do that? And that's where governance really comes into play. What is your plan around this? Are you so sealed off from DevOps and from DevSecOps that those conversations aren't happening? I don't know really what to tell you if that's the closed door and you're siloed and you don't talk to each other. So have those conversations. What you can ask them for in practical terms are inventory, is an inventory, are a list of identities. and just start there. Like, hey, what has access to what? In a perfect world, you'll be able to pull that up in a dashboard and say, okay, this key exists. It goes to this. It was issued here. This person owns it. It's being used in these places. Last time it was rotated was this time. That's kind of an ideal situation. And that's totally technically possible. I know this partly because I work at a company that makes this technically possible. We're not the only player in the world that can help with this, but we're the only ones that see it as a secret first problem. I've gotten some really interesting conversations the last couple of years of my life of what identity means. And I've come to the conclusion that it doesn't actually matter. And that sounds insane, I know, saying that out loud, because the attackers don't care. The attackers care about access. Whatever they can take to get access, assuming whatever identity means, they're going to take. Can I get to that database? Not, oh, who issued that? The attacker does not care. When was this last rotated? Does it work or not? That's the only thing they care about. So that's the pragmatic approach. What is the access mechanism itself we can hone in on? So that's first. Do you have a list, an inventory of all of these? Do you have visibility into all of your secrets? And then start mapping from there, like what state is it in? Like what does this go to? Where was it issued? Who issued it? But also you can start turning that on its head a bit too and say, look, what services do we have? What identity providers are even available across our organization? Maybe just start there. Like, hey, look, we have Okta and we depend on that day in, day out. How do our developers manage access for the stuff they're building? Is it just willy-nilly all over the map? They can make whatever API keys they can stamp and good luck? That's a much different situation than, look, we have policy and procedure and governance in place that says developers need to go through this portal and give me a direct, very specific answer on why this is getting issued. What's the lifespan of it going to be? Who is in charge of it in case of contingency? Like that person goes away, who inherits that role? Who inherits the responsibility for this thing? But you can't do any of that without at least having that conversation first of like, who owns this in the larger sense? What's the plan there? And then working from inventory on your way out.
I think that's great advice. I think the other thing I'll add is don't ignore the email that you get from GitGuardian saying, hey, you've got something out in the public that shouldn't be there.
And actually, I'll put a quick plug for it here at the end. I spend a lot of my time out in the field talking about where we're going next. And it's not going to be long-lived secrets. Standing privilege, standing access is awful. It's the root cause of so many of our evils. And yeah, if we solve that magically tomorrow, we'd have a whole new world of evils to deal with in security. I understand that. I'm not saying it's a panacea for all of our problems, but like the CrowdStrike's 2026 Global Threat Report, it's like 89% of breaches were malware free. 82% abused a credential for something that wasn't a human. I don't hold me to that one either. Like I haven't read.
Yeah, it seems like every report seems like around that 80% mark is. Yeah, it's an identity related breach of some sort.
I think 82. That's the number I want to have in my head. But read the report yourself. Tell me if I'm wrong. But it's still, it's a terrifying number. So everyone is kind of in general agreement that we need to move away from the piece of data should grant access. That's Ev from Teleport defines, the CEO Teleport defines secret that way. It's a single piece of data that by itself grants access. That's it. It's very simple. Like no matter what form it takes, you have it, you can get in. And we need to move to a world of get to a trust boundary and say, hey, who are you? Oh, I'm me. Can you prove that? Here's my certificate that proves my identity. Let me go check that let me validate that against the issuer. I trust this issuer. They're already on my allow list. I trust this endpoint because I was expecting it. Hey, I have a secret here. Can we exchange that public PKI real quick? Okay, now I trust you to tell me that you trust them. That's them. Great. Cool. Then come back to the transaction boundary and say, all right, what do you want to do? Now I can check the list and see if you're on my allow list for like you're even supposed to be here. And you want to do what? Hey, that totally checks out. Your rules say that's totally cool. Go ahead and make that transaction happen. And then and only then grant access, actually grant the key. The working model I have in my head is grant the key to the transaction, not any of the entities inside the transaction. So if the transaction's not happening, there is nothing to hold the key. So there's nothing to stand. And it sounds, again, like maybe I'm talking science fiction here. No, this is literally called SPIFFE and SPIRE. SPIFFE is Secure Production Identity Framework for Everyone. It's a graduated project in the CNCF. It is just as mature in their worldview as Kubernetes itself is. It's been around for over 8 years now. And it's been cloud native, like how Kubernetes should have been working the entire time for a while. But the great hope is we're now seeing this adopted much wider across the industry. And things like WIMSE, the Workload Identity in Multi-System Environments. It's a fun name for a really serious project. And there's a lot of Internet Engineering Task Force, IETF projects out there trying to deal with this right now. But let's make an operational standard that transaction, little dance, can happen automatically. Just that's how the protocol works. The same way you don't think, when's the last time you actually sat down and thought about it, how MTLS actually works? You don't. You just like, that's just a thing. That's literally MTLS is just a way to deal with transport layer security. That we're going to get there sooner than later. I know this for a fact because we are seeing this widely being pushed by the platforms themselves. If this was just like a couple little players, niche players here and there that were trying to solve this, like I'll throw out a couple names: Ambit, Teleport, HashiCorp is working on something like this. CyberArk's working on something like this. So that's why they bought Venafi. I would be like, okay, this is still like futuristic, but the platforms themselves have made some major advancements in 2025. And the biggest one I can point to is AWS Security Token Service, AWS STS. That service has been around for a while. It lets you call the issuer of an identity certificate, like just with an API call inside of AWS. So, hey, I'm going to make this call as a entity, as an identity. Give me this certificate I can take with me across platforms. And it always worked internally with AWS, but now it works across boundaries. So you can take it to Azure, you can take it across to Google Cloud, you can take it to Databricks, you can take it to a growing list of providers and say, no, we're expecting STS. And the way they built the protocol is really, really cool. I'm not going to get into the meat of it. I don't work for AWS, but it makes it very simple the verification process is very straightforward. It's very standardized feeling. And I think we're going to see more and more of that, where the developer will say, oh, look, I need to authenticate to this service. I think we're going to see it involved in the MCP ecosystem sooner than later as well. Like, what is the thing calling? Why is it calling? What's it trying to do? And let's build all of that in together to let's verify it, and then issue a trust boundary agreement just for this transaction, let it go away. It's not free. I mean, it's actually, no, STS itself is free for everything on AWS. This is the big announcement they made in November. That's why I'm so excited about it. And that's the one I talk about. Is like AWS believes in this so much that every developer on AWS could be doing it this way instead of API keys for everything they do, well, at least for things they can work with those particular SaaS providers. But operationally, and that's where I'm a developer advocate. Yeah. If I'm doing 1 million transactions a day and you're telling me I need 10 extra milliseconds for this handshake, 1 million times 10 million milliseconds, that's actual real time. That impacts bandwidth. That impacts a lot of things. Where is the line? Do we do it tinfoil hat mode where we do this for every transaction? Or do we allow OAuth type, hey, if as long as it's being the same identity, let's keep extending it. That's where the conversation should be. And that's where I'm always happy to engage. It's well, let's figure out what you actually need. Let's figure out what the limits of that are. I mean, let's tune that. But wow, that is such a better plan than I'm just going to put a key, and if an attacker gets it, they can just do whatever they want. It's really hard to take over a certificate authority. It's really hard to take over a platform. It is really hard to impersonate a specific stack and IP and make everything match what that credential was expecting, or what the certificate authority was expecting you to be. So if you come back, it's hey, is this them? No, that's clearly not them. Don't let them in. Do not do anything with that. That's a much safer world, in my opinion.
I love your passion and enthusiasm for this. And I'm going to have your LinkedIn profile in our show notes so people can reach out, debate respectfully, of course.
Sure.
I want to ask you a final question unrelated to identity and Git and all that stuff. But if I want to learn more about everything you just talked about, right? SPIFFE, SPIRE, WIMSE, we've done a few episodes, but it's been a while on those, and people kind of listen back on the podcast about that. But how do I get up to speed on this? Is there do you have a couple of resources you can just kind of share with the audience?
The number one book I have told anyone to read in the last 2 years of my life has been the SPIFFE book, spiffy.io/book. It's a 198-page PDF and explains all of this. There's even a section about how much developer time you could potentially save a week. And their estimate is, on average, about 5 hours per developer a week. Like, just don't have them deal with any of the nonsense of permissions or API keys or secrets in general. Just like figure out this better way to deal with identity and let the APIs take care of it automagically. I say automagically a lot, but it feels like that from the developer perspective. It's like, what do you mean? I don't have to manually set this. I just got to allow list it. What are you talking about? Like, that sounds magical. So I would start there. It's a great read. There's a lot of great resources. WIMSE, I would read the standard. You can just look up WIMSE and IETF. There's a working drafts. I wouldn't tell you where to start on that, but start, I guess, on their front page and look at the mission statement and like what they're actually doing. It's always in debate what we're doing with that. We're hung up around attestation and what falls within and without the spec as far as certain things. But that's the IETF in general. It's fun to watch. I'm not a member. I just a fanboy outside looking at all that. I've written about this a few times. If you want to get your hands on it and like actually get going, SPIFFE is a set of ideas the same way OAuth is, but they're in their SPIRE, which is the SPIFFE runtime environment. So if you want to download and just start actually testing and seeing what you can do with it, it's completely free and open source. Just like everything else cloud native, like they made it open source for a reason, so we can all get our hands on it. Tons of other reading you can do out there on the subject, but that's where I would generally start. Check out AWS STS. There's a really, really great blog announcement from November that explains everything basically I know about it. What I was saying came directly from that blog post, and it explains the architecture a little bit better than I could articulate. But yeah, those are the resources I would start with. Of course, we write about this on our blog as well, so you could always check out our blog.gitguardian.com, and happy to send people down that path.
I appreciate that. I'll have some of those links in our show notes for people to check out, but it's always good to have more resources we can learn from. So let's pivot to ending this on a lighter note, because I feel like we have all these problems in the world. Let's figure out how we're going to get to zero setting privilege that we've been talking about forever. It's like it feels like it's always on the horizon somewhere, but it's a mirage to maybe to some. What do you do for fun when you're not being a principal developer advocate?
It is springtime here in Chicago, and I live fairly close to Wrigley Field. I live about a mile from Wrigley Field, so love the Cubs. Go Cubs, go! Just put on a winning streak right now and touch wood.
It's the same. Jim's not here because he is a huge baseball fan, and I am not, but I am definitely a Cubs fan.
No worries. So that's how I spend right now. That's how I spent last evening. Spent the day before evening is enjoying the Cubs with some friends of mine. But outside of that, like I cook a lot. I've been cooking for a number of years, but I got really into making hot sauces during the pandemic, and that has evolved into other spices, dry rubs, and tahines and whatnot, spicy sour salt stuff. Started messing around with like really, really hot peppers at one point, which was a little too intense for actual sauces for my friends. I do it all as a hobby. This is like not a side business or anything. It's just something I enjoy doing. But I love hot food and sharing food with people, and it's a pretty good way, because if you share a hot sauce with someone, they're like, I don't like hot sauce. I don't know. What do you put this on? How do I store it? But if you start making like dry rubs, it's like, well, that's never going to go bad. It's shelf stable forever. Even if you don't like it, you can use a little tiny bit and a big thing, and adds a little bit of a kick to it. That's what I always tell people. So I got a few that I have refined down that I'm really proud of, that I've shared around with my friends here, and be carrying around with me. If you see me at future events, I might have some in my bag.
All right. So if you're going to be at Identiverse maybe later this year, that'll be a good spot to try it. I am not a spicy food person. I do not want to have an experience while I'm eating. If that makes sense. I want to enjoy the food, but I do like a little bit of something. Like if you were going to create something for me, or recommend something, that I should start with in this world, like what would be like, okay, start with just a pinch of this.
Scotch bonnet. Buy dried Scotch bonnet peppers and just start there. It's the base heat of anything jerk, like jerk chicken, that jerk spice from the Caribbean. And it's a really mellow spice. It's hot, but it's nowhere near like ghost pepper, that level. It's a reasonable pepper. And if you put just a little tiny bit in a dish, you'd be like, oh, that really perked that up. And it added a nice fruity flavor underneath it all that you can't really get any other way. If you could get to this, like part of the reason I love ghost pepper is it is the juiciest, fruitiest pepper on earth. There's no other pepper tastes like that. Like, yeah, it's one of the hottest peppers on earth, but I don't know how else to get to that taste. So I actually do want experiences. I do want to have I don't know how I would experience this any other way. And yeah, I'm sweating a little bit. Sure, I'm turned bright red, but I'm alive. I'm living it.
What's the hottest thing you've ever eaten?
Straight up scorpion. I did a bit of scorpion pepper once. And then in my trophy case behind me, my you can't see it because it's way too small, but I have 2 coins from PepperCon on there. PepperCon happens every year at the Toxic Barbecue at DEF CON, which is badly named. Badly named on purpose because like everything else is a joke. It's the friendliest, nicest part of DEF CON. It's like we gather at a city park in Vegas in blazing heat, and it's free food for everyone, and we make donations, and people bring craft beer, and then PepperCon happens. So spice enthusiasts bring their peppers that they have grown throughout the year or a spice blend they have. There's always a challenge coin from the people who organize it that if you take, lick the back of your hand and put a bunch of their spice on it, and if you can survive that, then you get a coin for the year. But other years, people have brought straight up pepper, that like little slivers of pepper. But the only one that I can remember eating, and it was like, I do not like any part of this experience, was straight scorpion. There's crossbreeds of scorpion, which are way better tasting. Like chocolate scorpions are delicious, but straight old school original, like when they made scorpion peppers, like that's a little too bitter. And it's one of the hottest peppers, like known to man.
Take me through that scorpion experience. Like, when did you know? Was it immediate, or is it one of those that like sneaks up on you and after a few seconds, it's like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble?
It was pretty immediate. Well, because it was a fresh pepper, like you get that juicy little like crunch. And again, and the first thing is like, that's a little bitter. And then it hits. And then it hits exact point for me anyway, it hit the exact point on my tongue that first countered it. And then like exploded out to the rest of my mouth. And from that point on, I can't accurately describe what happened other than I started like crying, nose running. And within a few seconds I was coughing. But where the spice hit, like I can describe most spices I eat, like how they hit the tongue, like where it rolls over the palate, like a wine connoisseur might, I'm not a wine person, but it's kind of like that. It can say, oh, that's very forward on the tongue, or that hits the very back of the sides of the tongue and then like spreads out to the back of your throat. This was just everywhere all at once. But yeah, I'm not planning on doing that again. Some peppers are really good to add to something. I actually have a scorpion mash in I use in chili, like not much, like 1/8 of a teaspoon, and a giant pot of chili will do you, but it adds like that subtle warm heat. And if it balances out with, the rest of the sweetness of the dish, then it works really well. But on its own, I wouldn't recommend just going out and biting into a raw pepper. Like that's what banana peppers are for. That's what, jalapenos are for. I eat jalapenos like they're not hot. Freaks some of my friends out, but like, love going to the restaurant and like, oh, they got jalapenos. I'm just got a giant side of jalapenos, eating them like potato chips.
I find jalapenos hot. So I'm one of those people. I like a little bit, like, maybe like a quarter of a jalapeno in the environment, but more than that, it's like, all right, we got problems.
Just scoop out the inside. Next time you buy a jalapeno, just make sure you carefully scoop out the inside seeds and that cartilage in there, and you'll be fine. Like that's where all the heat lies, is in the seeds and in that internal oils. If you
I want like half a seed. That's about my tolerance.
If you cut a pepper in half and it ever looks oily, I would avoid that if I were you. I look for that. Like you cut a pepper and it looks oily. Like there's a reason it looks oily. There's that inside that oil is where all the capsaicin is sitting, like ready to spring.
All right. Well, I don't know how we can, top that. Look for the oil in a pepper. Dwayne, thank you so much for spending time with us. And thanks again to GitGuardian for sponsoring us. I'll have links in our show notes again for everything, but go to gitguardian.com/LPS/IDAC. Reach out to Wayne with, pepper facts or recommendations or Git recommendations or things like that. Last words, Dwayne. I'll let you have them.
I am always on the road. If you check out my website, Dwayne-McDaniel.com, you can see my upcoming events. You can see actually past conferences and my blog writings and my videos for certain things that have videos for them, for appearances I've made. But big encouragement out there is talk to your other teams. If you're in security out there and you have never sat down with a developer and talked through their workflow, that's a really good place to start. Like if you can't defend what you don't understand, you can't defend what you can't see. So having that communication layer of, hey, we're just talking. I'm just trying to help you do your job. I don't want to get anybody fired. I don't want to get in trouble. There's no emergency right now. But hey, let's spend a half hour and you just walk me through how you push. Walk me through like what tools you use. Like maybe you can find better ways to improve. If you're IAM folks and you've never talked to DevSecOps, that's a problem. Go have those conversations. Organizationally, we have a tendency overall, I feel, to kind of silo up. It's like, I'm going to get my work done and I'm going to let them worry about their work over there. And with the current threat landscape, with currently what we're going through with machine identity, especially with agentic AI and all the identity stuff there, like we can't live on islands anymore. And the better relationships you have with your other teams, with the organization as a whole, is going to help you better position. Like if you're the lone voice out in the wilderness saying, look, we got to deal with this because massively bad things can happen and no one else is saying that, well, you're probably going to listen to. But if the heads of development, your infrastructure team, your IAM team, and basically anyone else that will listen is like, yeah, this is a hair on fire situation. We need to put this fire out. That gets listened to. That gets board approval. That gets, people want to be resilient. People want to be robust. So that'd be the advice is like in a world where we're pushing more and more to build everything you can as fast as you can and then manage these robot armies. No, I think the opposite needs to be true right now. Like connect with your teams, connect with them as people, like understand what they're working on and how you can help them do stuff better.
That's great advice, Dwayne. We'll put that in the bank for sure. That'll do it for us this week. Thank you so much for people who are watching and or listening. You can find us on the web, idacpodcast.com. Like, share, subscribe, all of that fun stuff helps us get great guests like Dwayne. And leave it there. We'll talk with everyone in the next one.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Identity at the Center. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at identityatthecenter.com. See you next time on Identity at the Center.